before. This is a listing of the cypherpunks. They had a community in San Francisco. They also started a mailing list, which is the mailing list that Satoshi dropped the Bitcoin white paper on. Is anybody, yes, the Crypto Anarchist Manifesto. So these are all very important, but I don't think it quite sums up, what we have in the room today. Is anyone really interested in open source? All right, we got a few people, and we've had open source communities for a while. This is an example of the Linux community. They've got a great little penguin. Is anybody really interested in cryptocurrency? Okay, yeah, this starts to sound more like it. And we have memes as well, so this, I feel like, starts to sum up what we're doing here. So, how do we get from crypto anarchists and penguins with Linux to Doge? And what's happening is you have this cryptocurrency. So currency is money. Money is a very human thing. It's like agriculture or language. It's a simple part of our society. And cryptocurrency serves a simple, fundamental purpose. And I think we can get really ahead of ourselves in terms of it does require significant innovation to implement these technologies, but the purpose that it's serving is very simple. So something like a wheel or a mirror or a zipper, very simple things. So these were developed by lots of people experimenting, and nobody really cares about how these things are created or who invented them. And the really exciting things only come once the foundation is built. So that's how we get things like Gucci or lasers or Lambos, because we have these foundations that they're built on. And the foundations of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are pretty simple. They're really just math. We could do crypto by hand if we wanted to. When we add technology to them with peer-to-peer networks and machines, we get something much bigger. So all of a sudden we can maybe replace this crazy banking system with something that looks like this. And I think the most important thing when we're replacing this is this, Bitcoin, currency. So currency and money has a very important role to play in our world. And community is created through a currency. So you look at something like a shopping mall or a bazaar, if we all share the same currency, we're implicitly part of a community. And now currency is created through crypto. And we've seen this happen in communities. You can look at these meetup groups. So I frequented meetups prior to getting involved in crypto, and the idea of a couple million people kind of joining a community around something is a bit crazy. I still continue to be fascinated every time I come to an event. 30 people show up, 40 people show up to talk about crypto. And what we're seeing emerge are social structures out of this. So back in the Stone Age, in the 20th century, we had other social structures, things like religion or Rotary Club, AA. These are ways that people are coming together. And apparently the internet is taking away America's religion, according to MIT. And you can see it plays out in this chart here. As internet use goes up, the number of people who are unaffiliated with religion is going up as well. And yeah, the internet, the global village. So crypto, when I look at this picture, which is the church, and then this picture, which is the crypto meetup, they look kind of similar. And I think all these people came here to see Andreas Antonopoulos. He was a great speaker. He's not a preacher. He's not a religious figure at all. But all these people came together to listen to this person talk. And here are the reasons that I found that people come to crypto meetups: personal transformation, financial transformation, innovation, but also people. I think in these social structures, people are coming together to meet each other. And I think we have this tonight. I think the most important thing in these crypto meetups is the networking time. And then, this is more of a formality. You guys are listening to me talk. Hopefully it's great. But I think the real reason that people come is to meet other people. And we've had all these companies emerge out of this. This is just one of many charts that look like this. Yeah, there's another one. But I think the sum of this, or the whole, is really what's important, and that is the communities. Communities are not companies. They're very different, and I think crypto will continue to show us how they're different. We have different rules. So if you take something like Coca-Cola, which is owned by shareholders and owned by trademark, if you tried to produce anything that had Coca-Cola on it, someone would sue you, you'd be put out of business really quickly. If you try to compare that to Bitcoin, it doesn't really line up. If you wanted to manufacture a Bitcoin shirt today, I don't think anyone would come and stop you. So also in communities, there's no corporate structure. Communities can morph. You really can't be fired from a community. You can be kind of exiled, but it's a very different process. And this is meant to explain that communities are not companies. So traditionally, companies are like pyramids. They're top down, but that's not the case in a community. Community, I don't know what this is, but it reminded me of kind of like what a community is like. It's a bit of a mess. There's no structure to it. People do, however, kind of gravitate around like good ideas and people that are effective. There's definitely gravity in it that pulls people together. But no one is telling people what to do or what to go or where to go. If any of you weren't interested today, like you just wouldn't show up. And I think on a broader scale, that has the effect of people like making dispersed decisions. The power is with individuals, and people will choose what they want to do. There's also an open door. People can enter and leave a community at any time. That also kind of changes the character of things. You get all sorts of people that come into these communities, and that's not always a good thing. For the most part, it's great because people are awesome. Wikipedia showed us that. People are also remixing things. So we have something like Bitcoin that was remixed into Ethereum. Then we had Bitcoin turned into Bitcoin Cash. We had Ethereum turned into Ethereum Classic. And people are free to do this. And this is, again, part of the community aspect. If this were a company, Bitcoin could say, Ethereum can't copy what I'm doing and change it. So this presents a different kind of competition. Instead of a race, which in some ways technology is a race, it's more of a marketplace of ideas. People are competing for the best ideas and to get people to contribute to their protocols, to come and attend their events, to talk about what they're working on. Okay, I'll switch gears here and talk about risks and challenges. So one of the biggest risks is money. I think it's very hard to monetize a crypto project. It's all open source software. A lot of these things are being built by passionate people giving freely of their time. And if those people need to be supported, they still need money at the end of the month. And I think for a while we're selling tokens, or the Bitcoin price goes up, and that has enabled a lot of innovation. But we still don't quite have like a fundamental, or I guess a sustainable funding model for these projects. Second risk is people. People are pretty, I don't know, they're human. They do good things, they do bad things. Sometimes people in communities have kind of like their own self-interest. Sometimes that isn't in the interest of the whole. And this is just a challenge that we have to navigate. So what works? So, of course, Buddhism is great, but I think an appreciation of the challenge is the first place to start, and then doing simple things. I think something as simple as making sure that there's coffee and bagels at your meetup. That goes a long way. And I think the things that work in crypto communities are simple, because at the end of the day, you're really just bringing people together and creating an atmosphere where they connect. Also, being a good person, helping each other, that's really important. At this point, I'm going to move over here so I can read my notes. So yeah, learning from each other. Communities are very personal. Also, keeping that open door. So people naturally want to be a part of these communities. They naturally want to help each other. And relationships are built on trust. So if you create this atmosphere where people can come in and they can grow, then things are going to flourish. And I think places like this, I've always been amazed at how they grow. I remember coming in this room where it was just an empty room, and now it's filled with people and chairs and furniture, and who knows a year from now what it'll be filled with. And I think all that happens just from allowing people to be a part of it. So we'll do some math here. So we learned that currency equals community. We also learned that currency now equals crypto. So community does equal crypto if the math checks out. So I've seen a lot of businesses try to grow around crypto and try to pay their way through the community part, but a lot of that is missing the forest for the trees. Because this is currency, it really is just driven by community, and that can't be forced by any one party or someone wanting to promote something. It really goes with the will of the people. So where do we go from here? So what we have here is a foundation. So I've seen companies start, I've seen people get jobs, I've seen all sorts of new groups form just in this kind of foundation. So I would say to you that you have this opportunity to start whatever you want or to take things where you want to go. So connect. Find people you agree with, find people you disagree with, argue with them, try to build things. More than anything, just make the most important thing in, say, coming to these events or navigating crypto communities to connect with others. And from there, light a match. Start something. A lot of things don't work out, things fizzle out, but if there's something you're interested in, if you want to start a company, just start working on it, start pulling people in, and you might be surprised by what takes. So with that, thank you all for coming. This is a quick talk. I'll open up the questions if you want. I've spent, go ahead. All right, let's do it.
Can you go into your background growing up in South Florida and then moving to San Francisco?
Sure. So I grew up in Florida. I was always a kid that was good with computers, but I didn't want my life to be computers. Moved to New York right after undergrad because I thought maybe I'd work in finance or something. Of course, I fell back on my skill set, started working in computers, worked in some government job that I couldn't get out of, so I just picked up and moved to California. Ended up in the Bay because the jobs were better than LA. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any more questions? You've got a question.
Do you think that community is the reason why Bitcoin is successful in comparison to other currencies? And here's the real question: do you see other currencies being able to take over? If they build a stronger community than Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think so. If you look at something like the Doge community, it just seems much more healthier compared to some of the interactions in the Bitcoin community. And sure, Bitcoin is technically superior, but if it's just money, I mean, maybe that isn't the most important thing. So it's possible that something that is just much simpler and just takes the place of money, works. You also have I guess how Bitcoin's approached it as being a currency. So one conversation I had recently is that if you look at the Bitcoin white paper, Satoshi doesn't reference like creating digital gold or like replacing governments or anything. I guess there is that governments can print currency at will, but it just feels like a very different thing compared to what we have now, where you have governments concerned about blockchain negating their ability to create currency. And I think what Satoshi designed was so much more of a payment system, and I think you could have that, like something could be more widely adopted because it's less controversial. Libra. Can you provide more details of the question? There's so many different ways Libra can go.
I know where you're about it, so I mean, open for you to speak further.
Maybe give like a quick overview of Libra, what it is for everyone that knows.
Yes. Okay. Great. Yes. So what is Libra? So Libra is a currency and a system that was proposed by Facebook, and what they would do is take money from people to sell them this Libra currency, and then they would have a blockchain that the payments were made on. There's, I think right now there's 40 different corporate partners that have invested $10 million to have nodes. They eventually want to bring that up to 100 million or 100 partners. The Congress of the United States is very much against Facebook doing this. It would be a Swiss foundation that would do it. Yeah, I think from an innovation perspective, it's great. I mean, I think that Facebook positioned it as banking the unbanked, which I think is a very noble cause, and I think banks don't bank people in those places because it would cost too much to do it. So maybe Facebook can deliver those people digital financial services at a lower cost. One thing that I think will, I guess, kind of slow down the project, and one of the most concerning things is really unclear who would regulate it. There's really no kind of legislative entity that sits above a nation. I mean, even like the UN or the IMF, I mean, those really are just made up of decisions by nations. So I think just the nature of it is going to slow it down for a long time. It's too much right now.
The question is, how does Libra relate to Bitcoin, and is it a threat to Bitcoin? If anybody else wants to answer,
how does, do you have an answer?
Well, I would say the
uncensored, censorship resistance, anyone can join the Bitcoin network, versus legal coin, where just like anything else, when you're on Facebook, they can censor you, they can kick you out of the network. So you're running the risk of being on the Libra coin, and let's say you say something about someone in the government, they could essentially like lock you out of your own fund. You know, that's potentially what they can do. So I think, I mean, I don't want to take the stage.
No, that's good.
So like, but like, I think what Bitcoin offers, and it all goes down to education, like the comparison. Okay, censorship resistant, peer-to-peer, and the direction that we're all going to decentralize is where Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are trying, because we're talking about Libra, centralized permission network where it's censored. So
This is what makes what we're doing interesting, right? Because we're telling people that the reason why the Bitcoin community around the world has grown so quickly is because it circles around these ideals, which are decentralization. You know, it's this form of money that is outside of the control of corrupt governments, which when you give governments the power to print money, they can't help but print money. So it's Bitcoin, the reason why it's become famous so quickly is because your first adopters were your libertarians, your anarchists, and then your gamers, your people that needed a form of money that were better. Now, Libra is interesting because they have this thing called community already baked in. They have Facebook users all around the globe that use them for their technology. You know, my grandma's on Facebook or whatever. And these are people that will essentially be able to use this new form of money easily, but not only that, but Facebook has this thing called Calibra, which Calibra is the wallet, and their goal is to be able to hold like bonds and stocks and additional like financial instruments on them. So they do have the ability to break in with community, but that's also why you're seeing the Congress sending cease and desist letters to Facebook because they're afraid. Andreas Antonopoulos, he says that the same way that Napster and your Spotify's killed the music industry is the same way that you're going to see blockchain and Bitcoin and Libra and technology companies kill banks. And it's just interesting because Bitcoin was created with this idea to upseat, I mean, not directly created with the idea to upseat banks and mines, but it was a way to circumvent them. And now you're seeing Libra come in, really, they're going to become a fintech company. And this is just kind of the progression. So to your point, to where you say there is no governing body and it's going to slow them down, I would say that would speed them up because there is no governing body. But it's a debate to be had. So.
And there's still people that need to go about their lives. The governments can stop them there.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Can you tell us what makes Nervos an interesting technology?
what makes Nervos an interesting technology? I think compared to other, next generation blockchain projects, it tries to emulate like Bitcoin's security model through proof of work, and it also tries to emulate like interoperability, similar to how Bitcoin has to be interoperable. It's the smart contracts and things like that are simple compared to other blockchains. Like they don't try to accomplish very much, but it tries to be compatible in a lot of different ways. I don't know if that helps.
Hey, as far as like tokens are concerned,
Sure.
do you think now that we're seeing Libra coming into the scene in Congress, do you see like the security token a big thing now, like this year or coming?
No, not really. I think that there's a lot of work in security tokens, but it's really just making securities markets more efficient. I think they're only for accredited investors, and there's already a number of places accredited investors can get securities, and this would just connect all those places together and make it more seamless. But I think for like the type of like transformation, say that consumers have seen with like a Bitcoin-enabled world, it's a completely different thing.
Sure. So I think what I'm seeing as well is that there's going to be a corporate coin, there's going to be government coins, and then there's going to be like cryptocurrencies free, decentralized. I think that's the direction we're heading to because you already got like Venezuela already wanting to start their petrol currency.
So I think it's just technology. It's like anyone can create an email address now, but just having an email doesn't it doesn't get you all that far. I think that we'll see a lot of the noise kind of filter out over time to see like what these things are good for, like what's real, what's not. But right now, it's just been a lot of people using the technology.
I don't know if you ever seen the clip on Twitter, or it's been everywhere, where a congressman was calling, well, when they were saying the hearing about Libra, he was like calling, referring shitcoins. He actually said,
Sure, yeah, a lot of shit coins in the world.
when Congress is saying that, I'm just like, wow, they're really on the ball. Like, what is that? It's just interesting, you know, because it's no longer like a taboo or anything like that. Like it's now real.
It's becoming mainstream. You're seeing Trump tweet about it. You're seeing the football players talk about it. The Miami Dolphins now accept Bitcoin and Litecoin in the stadium. If you guys didn't know that. Then I was talking to people that other stadiums are now like, wow, I have to compete, and they're partnering with other payment services to offer Bitcoin and Litecoin. When in reality, I don't want to spend my Bitcoin. But anyways, that's another story. But to Matt's point about security tokens is that you're going to see companies now, like there are other avenues for current accredited investors to be able to buy into companies that are securities. But I think where you're going to see the shift is it's much less expensive to an SGO versus an IPO, right? And the maintenance cost much less expensive. It's already a native digital asset. And so you're going to see companies that want to to do a raise, they're going to become security tokens. So in terms of people buying it, you might not see that adoption so fast, but in terms of companies offering it in that direction, that's probably going to adopt faster.
Another question back there.
So community being so important for all the crypto world, as a new company entering this space, what would you say are the most important things that a new company should be doing in terms of building a community? Where are the most important initiatives you would say?
So I think having like a problem solution fit first is the most important thing. So like have a really strong reason for the company to exist in the first place, which it's because this is like a novel technology with like a lot of smoke and mirrors around it. It's really challenging to like launch something amidst it. So like it becomes twice as important as like a regular startup to have like a problem solution fit. And if you have that, then you should kind of pull people in around that. Of, you know, if you get kind of like your idea out into the community of people that need it, they should gravitate around it and they should want to help you. And so I think like, yeah, to sum it up, the problem solution fit, and then just really interacting with people that need your product. And giving them like a way to contribute as well. I think it will take me more into the back and then I'll come back to you.
So I have a question in regards to political and financial crisis. I know before you had your talk, you briefly were talking about that. Do you think there's any way that we can somehow transition into a new economy without having these crises at the forefront of these nations? And more importantly, do you think like maybe experimental zoning, residential zoning can help with that?
To the first question, not so sure. Anything's possible, but it seems unlikely that we go through some sort of like significant transition and like there's no disruption as a result of like things changing significantly. With like it's like opportunity zones, like the opportunity zones around investment. But yeah, more experimental zones and like academics writing about what's going on there, that could help. But I think it's really hard to try to significantly change things.
I'm just thinking about like the sea studying community in the French Polynesian Islands, and also artificial islands being created,
Sure.
and new systems being created in that way.
But so say if you find, say like you get like intuitions from like observing what's going on in those like pockets, like how do you take that and then like enforce it somewhere else though? That's a bit of the challenge. Like how do you like inform human behavior and like control it so it conforms to a system?
Well, it would be peer-to-peer, right? Just like Bitcoin?
Like, but like what would be peer-to-peer though? Like everything?
Like policing, yeah. Like everything that's required within a certain society. Like policing, economic function, law. So smart contracts would be used. I mean,
you've got to somehow control human behavior, which I think the system as it exists now is like, it's in like a state where it's like, it's evolved to get here. I don't know if you can like significantly change that and still end up like in a stable state. Like, I think you kind of have to continue the evolution and like keep it in some place stable or move towards something stable. But I think if you change the underlying things significantly, I think you disrupt that stability. And then like, say if things are peer-to-peer and there's peer-to-peer policing, like what keeps that policeman that just got the badge because, I don't know, he just randomly did, like what makes him a good policeman? You know, what makes him an honest policeman? I think like when you disrupt kind of like the underlying structure, it's hard to like assume all those things stay.
Okay.
It's a big challenge. All right, one more. Hey.
So what do you think the drawbacks are of a bottom of community versus like a centralized community based on
So the drawbacks of bottom up versus top down. Things move much slower. There's no way that you can kind of like push people to do something that you want them to do. It's kind of like the will of like the bottom that like ends up being the thing that gets done. So if you have something that's centralized or top down, then you could say like, we're doing this. And like if you're not on board, then like go do something else. Those are the biggest challenges I see. Also funding as well. So like in like a centralized top-down thing, like you can probably find somebody to give you money to finance it, whereas the bottom-up stuff, I mean, pretty much just has to be organic and people have to just fund it out of their own pockets. All right, that's it.
Well, actually, it leads into, so not for nothing, but there's different approaches. Of course, there's crowdfunding. And the reason why I bring that up is that the company I work on, Token, we specialize in crowdfunding. Now, this is me just throwing it out there, but I'm not in the business to take anyone's right here. It's just simply the bottom approach from the grassroots. There's different ways to do it. Obviously, the traditional way is just take that long. With crowdfunding, that actually helps you distinguish whether your project's going to succeed or not. And that's the new approach that a lot of companies are going towards, where basically, okay, you know what, we create our token, but how do we offer that to the rest of the world? What makes our token different from other thousands of coins out there? And that's where the tokenization is coming through, and that's where you really want to distinguish yourself from other people. So that's something that I get into. Again, I'm not trying to take it out of you, but it's just after we talk, we can talk more about it. And well, the question I was going to ask is that what's going on in, for example, Venezuela with the Dash community. They're really making a mark over there because they're now, obviously it makes sense for someone in Venezuela what Dash is, what Bitcoin is, because they're seeing firsthand on a daily basis their money be valuable. And I think what someone else asked, I think that's really the first, I would say, test net that we can actually see this actually helping out people, because people are realizing, okay, I can put my money in Dash, yeah, it'll fluctuate anything like that, but it's stablecoin. So I think where countries where it really needs it the most, so Venezuela, Argentina right now, they're going through a crisis. Capital controls are saying like, you gotta cash out all your foreign exchange. So little by little, all these countries, fiat currencies are gonna crash, and Bitcoin is gonna be, or cryptocurrency itself, I believe is gonna be the hedge against what people are looking for. And I think that's when the real magic starts.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, so my question was, what's your opinion about that? Do you think Dash is doing a big dash in that?
I think the question is Dash succeeding in Venezuela? It's been unclear. I mean, I think there's been people that have said like Dash is just really doing a bunch of marketing, but there's really no kind of like adoption on the ground. I mean, I think if you look at kind of like, is local Bitcoin still around?
They don't accept cash anymore. They're still around, but you can't do cash for buttons.
Yeah, I think you would really, I mean, you can just see it in like the hand-to-hand volume of trade, like how good is it doing? Like, so compare like bolivars or dollars to Bitcoin in Venezuela versus bolivars and dollars to Dash, and like I would only use that metric. I mean, I don't know what those numbers are, but that's the only thing I would use to judge. It's like, are people moving significant quantities of this in something else? But I agree with you that the places that have unstable currencies to begin with are going to be, like, they're primed for this technology. It makes sense.
And they all have, I mean, they don't have access to things, they have access to Wi-Fi and cell phones, and that's all they need. But just because you brought something up about crowdfunding, what's interesting about what's happening lately is that the Jobs Act was passed in, I don't know, 2006? Sorry, I don't know when the Jobs Act was passed, 2013, let's estimate that.
Obama was president. I know that.
Yeah, Obama was president, so it was between 2008 and 2012, or 2016. Well, yeah, 20, sorry. Anyways, it allowed people to do crowdfunding methods, whereas previously when companies wanted to raise money, they could not raise from a community. So this does two things. First of all, allowed for ICOs. And second of all, this aspect that we're talking about tonight, which is community building, is now possible, right? Because when you have many people throwing $20, $40, $60 into having a part of ownership of your company, now they're personally invested in seeing you succeed. So this is something that we've not seen before. So it's really going to change the way that businesses are built from the ground up.
Any more questions? All right.
Guys, give it up for Matt. We only have 2 upcoming events this week. Tomorrow we have a trading class at 7 p.m. It's the third of 3 classes. Sorry, 8 p.m. Fundamentals of trading. On Friday we have a VR night. Where are my bits and tokens, guys? I think they're in the room recording. But we have a VR and game night. So people come here. We do have VR headsets. We play games. And then we just got our website revamped, so if you guys want to check out blockchaincenter.com, we have our upcoming events, so you can stay in tune with what we're doing here. And if you're interested in working with us and getting some co-working space, definitely talk to myself or Maria there in the blue, and we would love to have you guys. Thanks, you guys. Enjoy. Also, Lost Point, are we doing that? If you guys want to go over to the bar, you know, every Monday we go over to Lost Point. We really love Flagler Street. We really love building up this community. And Lost Point down the street gives us half-off drinks, so we will generally head over there in about an hour-ish. So, thanks, guys. Thanks, Matt.